Yeah, here we go now, baby. Right back into the action for another day of the week. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Before You Bet here live right now on the Covers YouTube and X channels. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like and subscribe button right down there. So a great big show planned for you guys today. Jon Middlekauff will be by here in a matter of seconds, discuss some of the big storylines in the NFL, get into a couple of his best bets, and Jon Metler will be here in the second half of the show. A lot to like in the NBA tonight. I think every single team is playing here this evening. So we have, I think, 9 total bets in the association. Kick around a little baseball, too. Blake Snell. That news came late last night. He signed with the Dodgers. Didn't really see that coming. Not really too surprised by it, though. If you guys want to participate in the show, very easy to do so. Hit up that live chat on YouTube, on X. Let us know what you like tonight in the NBA. Let us know what you like this week in the NFL. Give us a little breakdown. We will read a few off throughout the course of the program. Okay, let's get into it. Let's go to our guy down there in Arizona. John, let's start a little differently here today. The Washington Wizards off to a rough start this season. And the 11-point, no. You knew I was fucking with you right off the bat here. Kind of do like the Clippers to cover, though, tonight.
Aren't you glad that the NFL and the NBA have their versions of salary caps? Because in baseball, and listen, I'm a Giants fan. Blake Snell's a little all over the map, but obviously when he's on, he's really good. I mean, the Dodgers now just have unlimited money. It looks like the Mets could easily sign Soto. If he doesn't, he'll go back to the Yankees. It's like the same 4 or 5 teams, the Phillies for the last 3 or 4 years. If it was football, there would be 2 or 3 teams that would just constantly be spending an astronomical amount of money, and the parity would completely shift.
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted about it. You know, I'm a Blue Jays fan, so I grew up watching the Yankees pay everybody for years. But now, at this point in my life, I think I'm just over it. You know, everyone's playing by the same rules. But it is kind of bullshit. If you're a Pirates fan, Paul Skeens isn't going to be on your team in 6 years, right? They're not paying him $400, $500 million. You know, it's going to be the same thing. They're going to trade him for a boatload of prospects. If any of those prospects are any good, then they're going to get traded in a couple of years, right? So, I don't know. It is kind of broken in a way, I guess, in Major League Baseball.
I guess Major League Baseball would sign up for just the Dodgers and the Yankees every single year. You know, it's like historic ratings of recent memory. So, it's just, I guess it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, if Soto signs with the Dodgers, though, that will be complete.
That would be you'd agree with that. That'd be outrageous.
All right, let's get right into it. Let's start a little bit differently here today. So 3 games tomorrow, Thanksgiving. Not the best games, really, from a storyline perspective. You know, there's some fun stuff you can get into. Cowboys-Giants might be so bad that it's actually good. But if you could only place one bet for the 3 games tomorrow, what bet are you placing?
Well, I don't mean to be mean to you here on a Wednesday morning, but the numbers don't lie. And he's 0-7 in games that are colder than 40 degrees. The franchise record in these cold games speaks for itself. And listen, as someone who now lives in Arizona, but spent a lot of time, most of my life in California, it's serious. Like, you can't relate to growing up in a place where it gets cold and it's 58 degrees and going to a place that is then 20 degrees, because that's where you practice, and not have, I would say, a major impact. Especially, you know, Brett Favre could have been played for the 49ers, right? Or any warm weather team, and his arm would translate. Part of the reason, like, the Packers have had so much success over the last 30 plus years, and probably will continue with Jordan Love, is they have big arm quarterbacks, because that is, and it's why Caleb drafting him for Chicago, Windy City, these inclement weather. And I saw it in Philadelphia forever, right? When Andy got there, Donovan McNabb, and then Michael Vick, then they drafted Carson Wentz. I mean, honestly, Jalen has the worst arm of the group. Eli, that really matters in a game that you might have updated weather. I looked yesterday, it could be in the teens. It's going to be really cold, you know, and it goes back. Obviously, I mean, it's one of the coldest games in recent memory, that Chiefs playoff game. I remember talking to Veach at the Combine, and he was like, now they're comfortable in it because they live in it. They practice kind of in it. I mean, it gets so cold you can't practice outside, but he's like, you walked out of that tunnel for warm-ups, you're like, this is the coldest thing I've ever felt in my life. The Dolphins had no shot. Now, this isn't that level of cold, But I just think like this is one of those sometimes trends. You're like, well, a little. I think there's a lot of substance behind this trend, especially when you factor in the quarterback.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, I want the Dolphins to show up, have a respectable performance, have Tua erase that narrative. Maybe he talked about that in the press conference after the game versus the Patriots. But I am a realistic fan here, John. This is a movie we've seen before. The Dolphins get a little bit of momentum, they get a little bit of buzz going. From a national media perspective, people are liking them. I saw Cowherd had them in his top 10 last week, right?
Well, I'll say one thing, one positive on the Dolphins. Now, granted, who they play, the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Rams. So they're 3-game winning streak. And the Rams, I think has been a little weird on offense when everyone's come back. They don't look right, but still, they have held them all under 20 points. So, I mean, part of their success would be like one thing, Tua's coming back and they're just winning these 38-30 shootouts. They have been playing really good defense. So defense does translate in the cold. So maybe that gives them a shot, if they can't rely on their and really, Tua was good the last couple weeks, but the Raiders and the Patriots. But that Rams game was like a legitimate, like that style of play does translate. Now, granted, that was in a dome in Los Angeles. This is a little different animal. But to me, if your defense, if you tell me you hold, I don't know, the Packers to the low 20s, I would say you have a shot, right? And that was my biggest question mark with the Dolphins coming into the year before, obviously, we knew Tua would get the concussion, was just, I just don't think their defense is going to be very good. And I think lately their defense has clearly been, now it's hard. I mean, sometimes over the course of a season, you look back at a segment of 3 or 4 games and you go, well, it was really the opponents. So we're going to find out this week because obviously the Packers got their mojo back a little bit against the 49ers, 3 or 4 days ago.
Okay, so if the Dolphins do show up, they have a decent game, Tua has a respectable performance, maybe they get their running game going, and if they pull off the upset, does your overall opinion on them change a lot, a little, or not at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think they would be, I guess not kicking themselves because you couldn't have controlled Tua's head injury, but I think if Tua hadn't got injured, even if they were getting curb stomped that game by the Bills, which the Bills have kind of owned them, they would have been right there in the mix for a wild card, and I didn't see that as the case. I do think this could flip this week if Denver wins and Miami were to lose. It kind of feel a little unofficially over. They had too big of a hill to climb over, and Denver's probably Denver and the Chargers are going to get to 10 wins. So this is a pretty big game just to hold serve. I think, does Denver play Cleveland this week? So, the one thing about Cleveland, they do have a lot of good players. It's not just for a bad team. It's not just an easy out, but it would be pretty difficult. Do you agree if Miami were to lose this week and Denver to win? You kind of see the playoff picture would be the 2 North teams, Denver and the Chargers as the wild cards.
Yeah, they still have the 49ers. They got to go to Houston to take on the Texans, and they have more cold weather games up in New York against the Jets and Cleveland against the Browns, right? So, yeah, it is almost a must-win game here for the Dolphins. Okay, let's talk Kansas City Chiefs here a little bit. Sluggish past couple of weeks here. They limped to a victory against the Carolina Panthers. The week before that, they lost to the Buffalo Bills. The week before that, they got lucky against the Denver Broncos and won that game. So, any concerns here with the Chiefs, or is this just a case of same old Chiefs? They take their foot off the gas every regular season at some point, and they'll be right back to themselves here in the big games in the playoffs.
I think they're trying. I think this is kind of who they are. Their offense has limitations. Once Rice went out, their passing game was nowhere near the same. Kareem Hunt has done an admirable job, but getting Pacheco back, hopefully for this stretch will definitely help. But their offense is just going to be limited. And to me, the question is defense, because last year what really separated them when they flipped the switch after the Raider game was the corner play was just elite. I mean, they had Snead and McDuffie. I remember that Niner playoff game. It was like the Niners couldn't even, or the Super Bowl, the Niners couldn't get open. How good the defense was against Lamar. The defense hasn't been as good. And that would be a concerning part where, like I've been saying it forever, I kind of expect them to lose in the playoffs, which will be weird when it happens, inevitably it's going to happen one year. But like how often do you see one? I don't think we've never had a team win 3 straight Super Bowls. The other thing, usually 2 straight Super Bowls. It's not even just 2 straight Super Bowls. They have been to 6 straight conference championship games. So basically, since Patrick began starting that 2018 season, starting with that Patriot loss, that was the last, successful year of the Brady Belichick dynasty, all the way through this year, it's either been AFC Championship game at minimum, or they went to another Super Bowl and lost. So they've just played over the course of the season. I bet if we just added up their games, it would be close to an extra season, close to over the last 6+ years. And even if this year, if they win a playoff game, that's an extra game. That's an extra minimum 2 games in the conference championship if they're playing Buffalo or they're playing the Ravens. So that's just a lot. We've been talking about it. I live in 49er land where everyone I know is 49er fan. Everyone's mad. It's like, well, we just ran out of juice. Well, it's like the 49ers run started in 2019, but then they took off 2020. Like they didn't make the playoffs. So it's been 4 of the last 5 years. Well, the Chiefs have not skipped 1 year. So I just think there has to be some level of some injuries, some luck, and inevitably, like part of the reason we love sports, something weird is going to happen in one of these games, right? Because they're playing in all these close games. Inevitably, third quarter strip sack or a bad pick that has kind of been on their side. Really, the last bad moment that's happened to them was it 4th down? They went for the touchdown with Tyreek Hill against the Cincinnati Bengals in the NFC Championship or the AFC Championship game right before halftime. And he got tackled. I forget the exact play, but remember that. And then everything flipped coming out of halftime. That was like the most disastrous thing that's of substance, of consequence that has happened to this franchise in the last 5 years.
So they can have this reputation of playing down to the competition. Obviously, that was on full display against the Panthers last week. They lost to the Raiders on Christmas Day last year. They play the Raiders as a 13-point favorite. Do you think it's ever vocalized, maybe not necessarily them, but in sports as a whole, that, hey, we're not going to break our fucking backs against this team? Like you saw with Kevin Durant when he was on the Warriors, they'd be going down to the wire versus the Wizards as a 18-point favorite, for example, right? You think that's vocalized in any way?
I think the difference though is that Warriors team, if they did flip the switch, was unbeatable. Like this version of the Chiefs, even when they flipped the switch, as they did against the Panthers on that final drive, it never crossed my mind they were going to lose that game. But I think they tried to flip the switch on defense on the final drive that the Panthers scored, and they couldn't. So I think there's just a level in which they can't quite get to. I think I remember in the summer, 4th of July break, I was in Lake Tahoe playing golf with a bunch of Dodger fans. And they were struggling at the time relative to, the hype. And the Padres were and they were just complaining. And clearly they're high end because of their talent. I think you look at this Chiefs roster, you go, well, they have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But to be a great you do need receivers, right? And Hopkins is an older player who can't really run. Obviously, Worthy is a rookie, and Travis is a 34, 35-year-old guy who's not quite the same. And then they have a couple dominant players on defense, but as a whole, it's just not as good because they've had some injuries.
Okay, let's talk biggest game of the weekend. It is Eagles-Ravens in Baltimore. The Ravens are favored by 3 points here. The Eagles, they're just getting better as the season goes here. 7 straight wins for them. I think you could argue that the Ravens need this game much more than the Eagles do based on where each team fits in the standings here. So sometimes the Ravens don't show up for these big games. Just go back 2 weeks ago. They scored 16 points in a loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, countless examples in the playoffs here too. So if they do not win this game, do you still take them seriously as a legit Super Bowl threat?
I thought that game on Monday night was really impressive, given how good the Chargers defense was. One of the knocks on Lamar is when he plays some of these better teams, especially better defenses, he can look not like the guy that we see when he plays these random NFC teams and the record is 110 or whatever it is. He just eviscerates them. And his stats, he's had better statistical games. Obviously this year against the Ravens, he's had some magical moments, but that defense stinks. This was a real defense. And I thought if he plays like that, if he had played like that against the Chargers, the way he played against the Chargers in the playoffs last year against the Chiefs, the Ravens win the Super Bowl because we saw what they did to the 49ers on Christmas night. Like, that was a bad matchup for the Niners. And he just doesn't. So I actually had, after the Steeler game, like, God, I've really come around on this player. Like, I'm on board. Like, he's one of the great talents we've ever seen. But what is going on? You can't beat a team that scores 5 or 6 field goals, right? Can't score a touchdown. In that way, get played against the Chargers. It's like, okay. Now, here's the thing. The Eagles, they are not some dominant pass team. I think statistically, when it comes to pass attempts and pass yards, like, this is not the 07 Patriots. They are a dominant running team. Well, what do the Ravens do well? Stop the run. And to me, this weekend all comes down to, we are not going to let Saquon. We'll put 12 guys in the box. Saquon, to me, the goal would be like, we're holding this guy under like 50, 60 yards. And we're going to sell out to do it. You are going to have to, like, you want to beat us? I want to see you play like Joe Burrow. It's like, okay, our pass defense sucks, or everyone thinks that. It's, the Chargers couldn't really expose that with Ladd McConkey, right? I mean, it was that matchup. You couldn't take that much away in that game, right? And you could argue that you look at the AFC, beside Buffalo, Kansas City's pass game's not great. Obviously, Pittsburgh's got limited ability to score touchdowns. The Broncos have a rookie quarterback. So it's like the matchups are actually harder in the NFC in terms of pass offenses and pass explosion with, Minnesota, Green Bay, obviously Detroit, if Seattle were to get in there with their wide receivers. So, but this is a matchup where, like, hey, what if we saw you in the Super Bowl and we're going to make Jalen, it's like, okay, Jalen, can you beat us 250 to 300 yards and throw for 3 touchdowns? That's how you're going to have to beat us, because we are not going to let, I think the Rams tried, and then even Jared Verse said after the game, like, I know I'm only a rookie, but I've never seen anything like that. Like the Ravens have. I mean, they practice against Derrick Henry every day. This unit's been playing together for a long time, and they're just a dominant run defense. You saw it against the Chargers. Like, it just was hard, and that's where I think I'm fascinated to watch. Can, like, Jalen pick them apart? Because that's not really his game, right? No. His game is much more scramble and throw. He's been running a lot more this year, which is a good thing. I think this game's fascinating. I'm glad, because of the Thanksgiving games and the game on Friday, not many games on Sunday, and you can really just isolate this thing. And I think the Ravens are going to come to play, because last week they got life. The Steelers lose on Thursday night, then they win on Monday night. All of a sudden, if it had gone the other way, right, if the Steelers, it would be over, basically. Now it's like, we're right there. We can still win this division and be like the 3 seed.
Yeah, Steelers have the Bengals coming off a bye, too. So they could be right back in the first place here, the Ravens.
Are you surprised they were an underdog in that game?
The Steelers?
Yeah.
Well, people tend to overrate the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Their defense absolutely stinks. I mean, they have Joe Burrow and Chase, and Burrow can throw for 400 yards on any given Sunday, right? But and he's doing that, and they're losing is the problem in these games, though. So, yeah, I am a little surprised to see Pittsburgh a 3-point dog in that game.
And their offensive line,
as an underdog, right?
The Bengals' offensive line is not great, and that is one area where the Pittsburgh Steelers can just eat you alive. I mean, Burrow gets hit a lot when he's thrown for 400 yards against random teams, right? So it's like, TJ Watt, this could be one of those games where you're just like, holy moly.
Okay, John, let's get into a couple of best bets here. So you already gave out the Packers favored by 3.5 tomorrow night on Thanksgiving. Let's get into this game in Washington. The Commanders, a bit of a swoon here during the stretch run of the season. They have the Titans in 10. Titans are a 5.5-point dog. And you like Tennessee to keep this one close.
Well, one big picture thing, right? Jaden, I would say 6 or 7 weeks through the season, went from basically being 5-1 to start the year to the heavy favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. Now, anyone like myself who was pounding the table more based on value than I expected what's happened to happen at 14-1, and now Bo Nix has thrown his hat in the ring. And I think when you watch Jaden and just that team in general, they don't look remotely as close as they did before, like the Steeler game. And could that be Jaden's banged up? Right, every time you watch him play, they're wrapping that rib. He's clearly doesn't quite look the same and explosive. But here's the thing about Washington. Some people pick them as like a sexy playoff team. I just looked at their roster and went, listen, I was pro Jaden Daniels coming out in the draft, totally understood why he was a top pick. Terry McLaurin's a good player, but they traded multiple defensive linemen last year, so their defense was not going to be nearly as good, even if Dan Quinn gave them a big boost. Their offense, I mean, they're pretty dependent on McCaffrey, and that's not Christian McCaffrey. That's his brother, who was a third-day draft pick. Robinson's a good running back, but, he got banged up. Eckler's kind of a role player. I mean, he is a role player. Their offensive line, I think, had some major question marks coming this season. I just didn't think that team was that talented. So early on in the season, it's like had vibes of the New York Giants a couple years ago when they made it to the playoffs and beat the Vikings. It's like Dan Quinn's doing an incredible job because this roster, I remember when they beat the Bears on the Hail Mary. It's like the Bears have way better players. You watch the Titans against the Texans. Like, this was the thing with Will Levis, why he took so much crap. It's like, I actually think they got some decent players all over the roster. Their defense is good. So I bet on the Titans a lot early on in the season and got burned a lot. And a lot of that was Will Levis. Like, their defense was keeping them in games, and Will Levis would just, even last week, I had the game on like one of the boxes, didn't have the sound on. I look over, he throws a pick six. It's like, oh, come on, Will.
Classic.
But yeah. I think this is a good spot for him. I think Washington's leaking serious oil. And it's not because it's one thing like the Eagles last year when they went on, this fell apart. I think it was very troubling to a lot of people because, like, there's a ton of good players. You watch Washington, like, Terry McLaurin's not Jerry Rice, or Ryan Williams with Alabama. Like, he can only do so much. I just don't think their team is that talented. They're going to be so much better in the next couple of years, the more they draft and sign guys in free agency. Like, if they end up winning 8 or 9 games, it'll feel like a disappointment. But that's only because they started so fast. I think they made major strides and should be very excited about what's going on. I think the Titans could win this game outright.
Okay, best bet number 3, Saints plus 2.5 at home versus the up and down Los Angeles Rams.
Well, that's the other thing. The Saints coming off a bye, right? Didn't play. So you got the Riz, who's just given life to them. They've gotten some players back. I mean, Taysom Hill, when he's healthy, helps that team a lot. One thing with the Rams, I was a big believer because the way they played last year, they were easily one of the hottest teams in the NFL down the stretch of the season. I'll never forget, like, that Ravens defense was so good, and Stafford in that rainy game went toe-to-toe with them. They ended up losing because of special teams touchdown, but I thought we were going to get that version once all the guys came back. They look off. Something's they're just their version of the 49ers. Like, might not be their year because I like their players. Maybe it's, you watch with Puka and Cooper Kupp back. They treat Puka like he's their Jerry Rice. Cooper Kupp is really just kind of turned into a role player. Like, you can kind of see, like, Cooper Kupp's not going to be on this team next year, probably. Whether he's cut or traded or something, but this is kind of coming down the home stretch. I just don't know if the Rams are that good. They're very dependent on a lot of young defensive guys. It's more. Listen, I had the Saints to win the division, which is not totally dead yet. But this is more of a play against the Rams, who I think people are still treating. And I know I did the last couple of weeks. Like, I loved them against your squad in that Monday night game.
I did too. They gave that game away.
But they got like, I thought, thoroughly outplayed.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Like, I thought the Rams would be way tougher than the Dolphins. And that's where I respect the Dolphins the last 3 weeks, because there's a toughness element. And you just watch the Rams last week against the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles have a better roster, but they got shoved around in that game. It was just like it was kind of felt JV versus varsity, even separate from Saquon's big runs. It was really hard for the Rams to get anything going on defense. It took Darius Slay getting injured and then putting in the backup for them even to have a pulse. So I'm just kind of out on the Rams, to be honest with you. Like, I'm out on Washington. I'm out on the Rams. Washington's an easy bet for me, given how many points the Titans are getting. This one's a little more bold, but new at home dog, off a bye, playing a team that I think the Rams are more likely to be 7-10 than I do 9-8, given the team that I've seen the last 3 or 4 weeks once the receivers came back. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
7-10, 8-9 is probably, McVay's a good coach.
Yeah, I thought the Rams were going to have a repeat of last year when they went on that second half surge. And, I was kind of pushing that on the show here. Going into that Monday Night Football game against the Dolphins, I thought that set up for them perfectly. But I don't think it's meant to be. One last question about the Rams. Do you think they might consider starting over at the quarterback position, maybe if the right guy falls to them in the draft?
I think the problem is the draft is so terrible. Besides Shador, who's not viewed as it's not like he's viewed as Caleb or Jaden Daniels or this guy's not good, but when he was coming out, he's viewed highly. Trevor Lawrence, he's not viewed on that level. So the next best guy, I think, would be considered Cam Ward. And I think people in the league are, all over the map on him. So you're kind of stuck. I would just ride out Stafford and just rebuild around him and then be able to pivot. I do think at the Rams, as long as McVay's there, now football's different. It's not like baseball. These guys become available. But people would want to play. If you're a quarterback, wouldn't you want to be the LA Rams quarterback, living in LA, make Sean McVay an offensive coach?
Playing indoors.
The other thing, though, you could argue in football, it kind of feels like Seattle, who's completely flipped it around on defense. If you said who's going to win the NFC West right now, because one thing you see Arizona, they beat the crap out of the Jets and the Bears. That was indoors at home. You get them outdoors, they kind of look like a different team. And Mike is basically the McVay, Shanahan, LaFleur of defense of guys under 40. They're a team if you get and listen, Geno's fine, but imagine if you just put Stafford on their team right now, you'd be like, could the Seattle take out some teams in the NFC? They feel like a quarterback away from being really good.
Fun division, very unpredictable. Okay, John, before you get going, Thanksgiving tomorrow, what is the most overrated Thanksgiving food and the most underrated Thanksgiving food?
I'll go underrated. I feel like there's a lot of hate on turkey. I just think I don't know if it's like counter culture or an easy move for people to claim that they hate turkey. I love turkey. I love turkey sandwiches. Yeah. I love hot turkey out of the oven or smoker or however you make it on Thanksgiving. I love that version. There's deli turkey sandwiches and then that version of turkey. I thoroughly enjoy turkey. And I don't quite get the hate. I don't know if they're, for my family, we're pretty meat and potatoes. It's just, we have 4 or 5 items, whether it's, peas, mashed potatoes, stuffing, turkey, rolls. We don't have that many items. So I like
pie.
Gravy, pie. Pumpkin pie would be one that, I'm not a big pumpkin pie. I'm not a huge pie guy.
Okay.
To be honest, I can, my weight fluctuates because of sugars and desserts. That's something that I kind of have a soft spot for. And sometimes I just have to cut it off, but I'm more like ice cream. I'd say candy, cakes, pie. I'm just not a huge pie guy, I guess.
I like a good coconut cream, but back to turkey. When done right, turkey is one of the very best foods, I think. If someone
totally agree
perfectly and you get the gravy on it and you have the leftovers, you put it in a sandwich, it's absolutely fantastic. So we are aligned there on your turkey take, and we will leave it at that. And we'll say happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, John. Best of luck with your picks. Best of luck with your content the rest of the week, and we'll catch you again next Wednesday.
Happy Thanksgiving to you too. See you soon.
See you, buddy. Yes, sir. The man right there. Okay, let's go to the other John who appears on our Wednesday program, Jon Metler. Little baseball to start here, John. I didn't expect this news last night. I didn't even know it was really rumors to be happening, but Blake Snell to the Dodgers, the rich get richer, and it looks like they're in line to grab this big time guy coming out of Japan. I don't know what his name is right now. So as a result of that, it looks like Jack Flaherty won't be coming back, which I'm a little surprised by. He is a Los Angeles guy, and he was, pretty outspoken at the parade, I think it was, saying, yes, I do intend on coming back. I would love to come back. And Walker Buehler, the homegrown guy, it doesn't look like he's going to be back either. I think Walker Buehler, my prediction for him, he will be on the Atlanta Braves. I think that's a perfect spot. It makes sense. They kind of like to bring in these guys who appear to be past their prime a little bit. How to work out with Chris Sale, Cy Young Award winner, pretty good. Charlie Morton's been fantastic for them. So I could see them bringing in Bueller and kind of replicating some of the success they had with those guys. And Jack Flaherty, you're probably happy about this because he might be landing right back in the lap of your Detroit Lions or Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, I feel like he is. Even when they traded him, I felt like that was kind of the move where it's like, go to LA, win your World Series. He did. So I feel like when you win the World Series too, it's more likely the person comes back because like he got his ring, he enjoyed his time in Detroit, and I think he did kind of like. I think he thought Chris Fetter, like the pitching coach of the Tigers, was the reason he kind of turned around his career and turned it around this year and was the pitcher he was. And I think he wants to come back to that. That's literally just my guess. Him and Tariq Skubal, and he interacts with the Tigers players a lot on social media, and he was very active when Skubal won the Cy Young and things like that. I do just think there's a relationship there. The Tigers going to spend money, definitely not like the Dodgers, but hopefully we'll see. I was hoping we get Alex Bregman. I have a bet on it, but we'll have to wait for that one.
A little baseball talk here. So people doing the thing where, the Dodgers, this is ridiculous, spending all the money. I'm of two minds here. I used to complain about this forever, but everyone's playing under the same rules. And we've said this before on the show after the Dodgers won the World Series. The Pirates can go out and spend $1 billion if they want to. They just choose not to, I guess. So would baseball be better, more competitive with the salary cap? Absolutely. Yes, but that's not how the rules work. Anyone can spend the same amount of money. We'll see if Juan Soto lands somewheres. You would expect that hopefully to come before Christmas at least.
If he goes to the Dodgers, that's just insane. But I agree with you. It's like, hey, if you want to be good and you want to spend the money and you want to invest in all this, what it takes to have a good team, go for it. I think the sports are better when the good teams are good. So like it's good for hockey. I don't know much about hockey, but I think it's good for hockey when the Toronto Maple Leafs are good. It's good for baseball when the Yankees and Dodgers are good. If the Super Bowl was the Jaguars versus name your other team, not great, right? So I don't think you should punish these teams that bring in so much money and invest. I mean, college football is kind of a good example where it's like you can do whatever you want, college basketball as well, but you still get these rotating champions. You don't just get the same champion every single year. So it's kind of nice to see the same, it's kind of like that. If you build it, they will come. I don't know. I don't hate it. Honestly, I don't care. That doesn't bother me.
Checking in on the live chat here, Abdullah says, I'm a blogger. I work in an SEO company. I have many high-quality websites. Do you need paid guest post and backlink services? I do not, but if anyone watching is interested, Abdullah can hook you up. Abdullah, advertising his services here on our betting program. Okay, let's switch over to the NBA. We were talking about the Milwaukee Bucks yesterday and how they've turned the corner. I think they've officially really turned the corner. They go to Miami. They were, I think, an underdog of 3 points. Then it comes out in the early evening that Giannis isn't playing all of a sudden. They go on to win that game anyways. They had a really big lead at one point. I think they ended up winning by 3 points, so good for them. That's a team that I do like. Now, I went 1-2 with my picks yesterday. One bad beat, though, guys. I hate it when this happens. I had the under in Rockets T-Wolves. I had under 220. I think they had 2:05 at the end of the fourth quarter. What happened? Of course, they went to overtime, and the game went over. Durant ends up going over his point total by, I think, half a point, though. So 1-2. It didn't kill me. So we will look to get back to the winning ways here tonight. Is every team playing in the NBA here tonight? There's got to be at least a dozen games here, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. I know the Celtics aren't playing. So there must be. I think other than there's someone else isn't playing if the Celtics aren't playing, but pretty much everyone's playing. Yeah, it's a loaded slate. I was up early this morning going through. I was like, wow, it's a lot of games to get through.
There's a lot to like here.
Yeah.
I came up with 5 picks easily. I like these all. Let's get into it. And let's start with a big favorite here. I like the Cavaliers to cover. Their favorite by 10 points against the Atlanta Hawks tonight in Cleveland. And look what the Cavs have been doing at home this season. They're undefeated at home, of course, 10-0. 8 of those 10 wins have come by double digits. Since November 15th, they have wins of 18, 14, 28, and 14 in their four home games. Look at this offensive gap between these teams. I think people assume that the Hawks are a really good offensive team. They do score a lot. They just play at a fast pace, though. Dig into the stats here. Over the last 10 games, second in offensive rating for the Cavs versus 24th for the Hawks. First versus 23rd in points per 100 possessions. And what I really like about this, the big path to victory, I think it's going to come from three-point land. This is the number one team in the NBA in three-point percentage versus the team that is dead last in three-point defense. So I think the Cavs keep rolling. Big number, not scared of it. Let's go Cleveland. Next up, props for you, John. Jared McCain. What do you like for him?
Yeah, I'm going over 19.5 points. You can play 20.5. I know it's moving that way as well. It looks like a big total for when you're talking about like a rookie, but the reality is no Paul George, no Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey and him, they just need to shoot. Like there's not much offense on this roster outside of McCain and Maxey. So when you look at McCain, like this guy's shooting double-digit three-pointers per game. You don't really love the matchup, I would say. Houston Rockets, great defense, not a good spot for the Rockets. As you said on your bad beat, second night of a back-to-back, traveling, went to overtime. But the thing is, I do like about Jared McCain is like his offense is kind of more like that Steph Curry where you don't really know where he's going to shoot from. And that's harder to defend, right? Like if you're a really good defense and like the ball's coming into the lane, you can set up, the Rockets are really good. Like they can game plan for that. But like Jared McCain's a shooter. That's a lot harder to stop. I just think when you look at, the focus should be on Maxey, and then Jared McCain should be able to pick on Jalen Green a little bit. And that's actually kind of why I was looking at Jalen Green props as well. And I've decided not to roll with him because he might get pulled. You might see more Amen Thompson to try to stop Jared McCain. But, it's a tough defense. But you look at the Cavs, really good defense. And Maxey wasn't playing that game, but a couple of games ago, he got up 26 shots against the Cavs. I mean, if you can get up 26 shots against the Cavs, I think you can create offense against anyone. So I'm going over 19.5, Jared McCain.
Okay, I have a pick for that game momentarily, but not next. Next up, we are discussing John's Orlando Magic. I will not be fading them. I am 0-3 when fading the Magic this season. I have learned my lesson. I will fade them again at some point, but I'm going to go with a much more reliable option, I think, with the Bulls in town. Going to go under 224.5. I think this total is way too high for a Magic game. Check out the Orlando Magic at home. They're allowing a league best 95.4 points per game at home. Last 10 games, regardless of location, they rank 25th in scoring, but first in points per game allowed at 95.2. They are the only team in the NBA in this 10-game span that is allowing fewer than 100 points per game. And it's rock bottom scoring here, guys. 4 of their last 7 games have had fewer than 200 points. That includes a game versus the Pacers, who, like the Bulls, play at a very fast pace. And look at the matchups between these teams recently over the past couple seasons. Low-scoring matchups are the norm. They combined for just 201 points when they played less than a month ago. 5 of the last 6 games between these teams have gone under. 11 of the last 15 in Orlando have gone under. So I think the total's too high. Going to take under 224.5 in that one. Next up, Anthony Simons. What do you like?
I'm going over 4.5 assists plus 130. So Simons, he's in a weird spot right now. So his last 6 games, he's gone under his assist total. All 6 games, has dropped his total from 5.5 down to 4.5. And like you can see pretty big plus money on the 4.5. So it's moved quite a bit. But like his recent box scores, they really just don't show his role and how good he is at creating offense for the Blazers. Because, if you rewind, the one game was a 45-point blowout against the Grizzlies, so he didn't play many minutes there. The next game, he gets injured. So then that game, he only plays like 5 minutes. And then the next game he comes back, he only played about 20 minutes because he's ramping up. So you have 3 games there where his minutes are down, his box score doesn't look good. And I just think that's kind of affected his prop here. But you look at his last 2 games where he's gone under and he's played like 30 minutes. I think he's about 13 potential assists per game, and they just aren't converting. So when you see that, Anthony Simons is like a purely offensive player. His defense isn't great, and that plays well in this Pacers game. When you get tempo, this is the exact type of game you want an Anthony Simons prop in. So I'm going over 4.5 for Anthony Simons.
Okay, let's go back to Rockets 76ers. We have a total of 219. I am going under. No Joel Embiid or Paul George in the lineup here for the Sixers. What an absolute mess. So second game of a back-to-back here for the Rockets. They went to overtime with the T-Wolves there last night, as I discussed. And when they are in the second game of a back-to-back this season, a lot of low-scoring games. They're 4-0 to the under in this situation. Their last 3 times in this spot, in the second game of a back-to-back, they combined for 202 with the Blazers, 201 with the Bucks, and 199 versus the Wizards. So just rock bottom scoring in the spot here for Houston. Real potential here for a bricklaying contest in Philadelphia. Look at the shooting for these teams, 28th versus 29th in EFG shooting percentage over the last 10 games. Houston, though, defensively, they are number one in that category on the defensive end. Argument can be made for them for being the best defensive team in the NBA. And look at the 76ers. Oh, my God. Like I said, no Joel Embiid, no Paul George. I don't know if Tyrese Maxey is even up to full speed at this point. This team's having a lot of trouble, even cracking 100 points here. So the last 10 games, they are 29th in scoring, 101.4. Half of those games, they didn't even get to 100 points. Now they're playing one of the best defenses in the NBA. I love the under tonight in Philadelphia. Next up, Wemby. What do you like for him?
Before we go to Wemby, did you look at the spread for that game? Did you have it? It was, I think it's like 4.5, 3.5 for the Rockets.
I think it was around 5, if I'm not mistaken. It's 5 right now. I'm looking at it right now.
The Rockets kind of jumped at me there, but if they didn't have that back-to-back overtime game, traveling, I was like, oh, it's just because you're looking at the matchups and you're like, the defense is just, they take away everything. I don't know, it's interesting.
Well, what scares me off is it's also the third game in 4 nights for them. Just the desperation from the Sixers. Can they not make this game close at least? Yeah. So, stay away on the spread. I like the total, though, quite a bit.
There's just one that kind of like popped. I was like, I can't bet it. All right, let's go. Wemby. We're going Wembanyama over 3.5 assists plus 135. He's playing the Lakers. Oh, my God, the Lakers. Like, they just keep getting blown out here, and they don't even look like they're trying. And JJ Redick's questioning their level of compete. It's horrific, if we're being honest. But it's both teams are back-to-back. Spurs were in Utah last night. Maybe Wemby doesn't play and this runs void. Who knows? But the matchup here is just, it really plays into Wembanyama assist because the Lakers defense is horrible. But the best part about it is Anthony Davis. But Wembanyama is just chucking threes. Like, I was watching that Jazz game because I had Jazz on the spread. This guy has never met a three-pointer he doesn't like. I think he shot up 13 last night. He's shooting double digits. And what that does, it just pulls Anthony Davis away from the rim. If Anthony Davis isn't at the rim, I mean, the Lakers are already vulnerable to people blowing by them, laying it in. He is the best part of their defense. So Wembanyama really puts them in a bind here because, if anyone he's passing to, they should be able to open cuts, get through the lane. The other thing too is like Anthony Davis, the way his minutes line up, he usually plays the whole first quarter. Victor Wembanyama comes out pretty early, and then he kind of plays like the beginning chunk of the second. So they don't really line up that often, or as often as maybe the Lakers would even want Anthony Davis on Wembanyama. And then those minutes, like the Lakers have to double him. So it's just the matchup, I think, just really plays into Wembanyama assists, and it's a good number, over 3.5 plus 130. So I hit the button, no question with that one. I think we just bet that against the Lakers as well. I think he had 5 assists. So give me the over.
Indeed. Okay. I hope you guys like unders because I have another one for you. Hey, I like what I like here. Doing well on betting NBA totals this season. Let's go to Indiana. We're going to take the under with the Blazers in town. I took the under in the Blazers game on Monday night. I told you guys it was too high. I think it was 233.5 versus the Grizzlies. Once again, I do think it is too high. So check this out. Blazers games with totals of 226 or more this season are 7-0 to the under. So I think this total is way too high. They've only played in 2 games all season that have crossed 230 combined points, and neither of those games occurred within their last 12 games. Check out Portland's last 6 games, regardless of location and opponent. Each of them has gone under an average of just 210.5 combined points. And the offenses aren't great. The Pacers score a lot, but once again, this is a team that plays at a fast pace. 22nd in offensive rating for them over the last 10 games. Guess who's dead last in the NBA? It is the Portland Trail Blazers, who are 29th in three-point shooting percentage. Portland a little bit better on the defensive end, though, lately than you might think. Top 10 in defensive rating over their last 6 games, which have all gone under. So I think another lower scoring game in Indiana. And we each have a player prop to wrap things up. A couple high-profile guys. You're going to go back to the well on Kevin Durant.
Yeah, what happened yesterday doesn't change my mind. I'm going over 2.5 assists, minus 115. I just think this is a price that's just not the correct price for Kevin Durant for an assist prop. I think he had 2. I don't know if it was first quarter, but it felt like the first quarter or early in the second quarter. He had 2. He just didn't get there. The game was a blow. He ended up getting pulled in the fourth quarter there. You're coming back to this. This is Brooklyn Nets. Again, it's back-to-back. He's coming off the injury. They said he was on a minutes restriction, but I don't think we truly know what that even was because he ended up playing 28, but that was more, I would say, because of the score. So who knows if that's a close game. I do think he gets like 32, 33. I set this at 30, and actually today I think I set at 28. I put it even lower because it is the back-to-back, and you still just have a massive edge at this number. So I just don't see how we don't play it. And I mean, he is playing the Brooklyn Nets. It's the team he used to play for. And when you're talking about like the overall team defense of the Nets, anyone he passes the ball to, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, when these guys get going downhill, they should be able to finish against the Nets. So potential should convert. I was sad we didn't get it yesterday, but I don't care. I'm coming right back to it.
Kevin Durant revenge game. Okay, let's go to his former teammate, Steph Curry. I love him to go over his point total here of 23.5. He's playing against the OKC Thunder at home. He's questionable. More on that in a second, but let's get into the handicap first. So he just has a history of torching the Thunder, absolutely killing them. An average of 33.8 points per game over his last 7 against them. He got to 30 points in 6 of these 7 games. He played them a couple of weeks ago, had 36 points against them. Might surprise you to hear OKC not good at defending the three-pointer. They ranked 25th in opponent three-point percentage over the last 10 games. Also allowing the most free throw attempts per game in the NBA in that span. So a lot of pass to scoring here for Curry. When he played them a couple of weeks ago, he had 7 3-pointers in that game, and he's shooting the ball very well at home this season. 50% from three-point land it's still called Oracle Arena. Is that what they still call it?
Chase Center. It's so funny you say that because I had to write something on the Covers website today, and I literally put Oracle. I was like, that's not called Oracle. I had to go Google it. Chase
Center. So Curry is questionable. Both knees. He's getting old, but I do think he does play in this one. It is a home game versus a marquee opponent. They're coming off a couple, 2 straight losses. They haven't played in a couple days either. If it was the Wizards coming to town, maybe he would sit this one out. But I do think he plays, and if he doesn't, then the bet just gets scratched. So I do expect him to play and have a decent game. Now, I was going to go 30-plus points for him, plus 265 on that one, but we do have a situation with him being questionable. Maybe if he were to get, if the Warriors were to get up big, maybe they would take him out early. Maybe he wouldn't get his full allotment of minutes, but I am still comfortable at 23.5. Checking in on the live chat. Ufem Drain says, hi, John and Joe. Hello to you. Landon McKinney, Cavs total. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on the total in that game. It's at 240, which is a monster. I'd probably lean under on that one. The Hawks shooting hasn't been very good lately. And who wins the Blazers game? I'll probably take the team that's favored by 10.5. I don't know if the Pacers will cover in that one, but
that would be my opinion too. I feel like Pacers win but don't cover would be. So I didn't bet that, but that's what I would lean.
Yeah. Let me throw this at you really quickly before we sign off. I have a great idea. I put it out on Twitter this morning. Some people disagreed. Some people like it. Every Thursday, we have this amazing tradition of the 3 NFL games. The NBA, once a year on Thanksgiving, should do a morning game. I think if you did it all the time, it wouldn't be that popular, but just a once-a-year thing. You make it a marquee matchup on the East Coast. The Knicks hosting the Celtics at 11 a.m. Eastern. I think people would tune into that. You would easily fill the building. Do you think that's something you would be interested in? Do you think something people could get into just once a year?
Yeah, if anything, it might be a good opportunity to do like a global game where the time, maybe it's like a 7 p.m. start where they are, but it's like a 10 a.m. start for us. Do you know what I'm saying? There you go. Now we're cooking. But obviously, we're in like a sports like betting age here. If you give anyone any days, give us a game at 10 a.m. Everyone's off of work too.
Yeah, that's it. Kids are off school.
Yeah, if everyone gets up for a 9 a.m. like Jaguars Giants game in London, we can do it at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., probably 11 a.m. Is a football game at noon or 1?
Right? I think it's at 12:30
Eastern. So you want to do maybe 11 Eastern?
11. Yeah, or 10. Yeah, start
10 a.m. Yeah.
Tip at 11
a.m. Not the classic 11 a.m. NBA game, but it's 11:20, and now we're
drives me nuts. Yeah, but do that, a bit of an appetizer for the NFL. People have it on in the background while they're getting set up for the day. Everyone with their silly parlays and stuff like that. I think people would love it. So there's an idea for you, NBA. Okay, let's recap the picks. John, you can do yours and I will do mine.
Jared McCain over 19.5 points. Anthony Simons over 4.5 assists. Victor Wembanyama over 3.5 assists. And Kevin Durant, do not let me down today, over 2.5 assists.
Okay, I'm going big here. I like the Cavs to cover the 10-point spread against the Hawks. Bulls, Magic under 224.5. Rockets, 76ers under 219. Blazers, Pacers under 232.5. And Steph Curry to go over 23.5 points. Man, what a good show today. It was nice to talk a little bit of baseball. We'll probably be talking a lot more of that with these big free agents picking their teams here in the coming weeks, and the winter meetings coming up, I think, next week too. So we're going to be right back with you guys tomorrow. And if you haven't heard, we're going early tomorrow. We're going at 9 a.m. Eastern. Big Thanksgiving Day preview and picks for the 3 games. It will be Jingles and I. We're going to have at least 2 picks for each game, sides, totals, props, maybe a parlay or 2. And then Jake Butt's going to be here the second half of the show, get his thoughts on some of the stuff in the NFL. And it is a massive weekend for college football. He is, of course, a former Michigan Wolverine. Michigan playing in a pretty big game this weekend. The stakes not as big as the past couple seasons, but still a game of interest with them taking on Ohio State. So we're going to get his thoughts on all of that. And then John's going to be right back with us on Friday's show because there is no NBA tomorrow. But until then, thank you to my 2 guests for joining. Thank you to producer Mick for putting together the show today. Thank you to our sponsor, BetMGM. Make sure you check them out for all your sports betting needs. And thank you to all of the great viewers for tuning in today. Guys, best of luck with your bets tonight. We will catch you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Let's go, Cleveland.